There are right-wing movies, and there is right-wing media, and there are right-wing protests. Just to clarify, I'm not a right-wing person, but I saw someone saying this earlier, and that's just not true. Pretending that one group has a monopoly over creativity in general is kind of silly. But more importantly, assuming that only one kind of group can make good art makes you more vulnerable to propaganda. Let's think about this for a second. So let's take a movie that is ostensibly right-wing. Batman, Iron Man. Are they right-wing? They have a good guy in them. He helps people. That's what left-wing people do, right? So it's not right-wing. No. You're thinking about the person doing the actions that they're doing. You're not thinking about the framing. The framing of those films and that sort of comic book property in general is that if you give a good rich guy a ton of money, then they'll do the things that people democratically can't do. They can't elect officials to effectively fight corruption and crime. They can't hold people accountable. They can't save people from countries in the middle of nowhere where people are being harmed because only a guy in a flying suit of armor that can shoot lasers from his hands and blast terrorists with little tiny needle missile thingies from his shoulders is able to effectively stop bad guys. The framing is not Iron Man's against gay marriage and Batman wants transgender people to be eliminated. It's that private wealth hoarded by dragon-like people can be utilized in a good way. Now, those are fun properties. I love Iron Man, I love Batman, but I would not want them to exist in real life, not because I think that superheroes are bad or woke or blah, 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 whatever, but because if you have a society where your problems have gotten so bad that you need a billionaire guy to just be your savior, that is a right-wing dystopian sort of hellscape. I think the problem is when most people think of right-wing media, they think of ham-fisted propaganda stuff like God's Not Dead, Facing the Giants, which are not on the same tier as something like a Marvel movie or whatever. All it has to be right-wing is the framing, and you need to learn to recognize that. Ghostbusters is a right-wing movie, not because it's bad or anything, but because it frames academic institutions as a place where nothing is produced, right? I mean, at the beginning of the movie, when Ray is hanging out with Venkman after gets their job lost as professors at a college, he says, "You've never worked in the private sector. They want results." Pointing to the idea that if you're not for profit, then you're not actually making anything of value. You're lazy or something. The bad guy is Peck, the guy who's the EPA dude who tells them they have to unplug their ghost machine and lets all the ghosts out into the city. You know, that is a right-wing framing. The government came here to take away your freedom to store ghosts, and as a result, you know, all hell literally breaks loose. There is good right-wing media, but it just needs to understand that there's a way to recognize it. In the same sense, this is also why movies like Starship Troopers have been misidentified as right-wing at some point. I mean, the guy who made Starship Troopers was trying to make a parody of Mini Mustache Man. The uniforms of the intelligence guys are one-to-one. Some people are like, well, this is glorifying us. No, it is making fun of it in a way that's a little less on the nose than like some parodies are. And you know this for sure because the guy who directed it, Paul Verhoeven, also director of a bunch of other films, basically watch all Paul Verhoeven movies, no matter what critics say. Pretty much all of them are good. There's some that are a little, aged a little differently now. You can look up his filmography, know which ones I'm talking about, but things like RoboCop and stuff have been misinterpreted as to be like pro-cop instead of what it really is, which is making fun of how ridiculous Americans are about violence. I think the great thing Verhoeven once said was, Americans are psychopathic prudes. They're okay with you eviscerating people with 1,000,000 bullets, as shown in RoboCop when ED-209 just eviscerates one of the guys in the board meeting and nobody bats an eye. But as soon as you do something like Showgirls, oh, that's not okay, or what's her name? She crosses her legs in a certain way in that movie with Sharon Stone, Basic Instinct. Oh, that's not okay. People freak out about that. Because that's a uniquely American thing. But back to what I was saying about him, the reason you know that he is not right-wing is because that man grew up in hankily-shankily occupied Holland. He actually was there when it happened. And so that man's not going to make a pro-right-wing movie. If you aren't understanding media, you aren't going to learn to recognize what is right-wing, what is right-wing parody, what is left-wing, because you're just going to associate good with those things, and it's more important to learn how to think critically than it is to just assume left equals good, right equals bad, or vice versa, because that will make you learn how to recognize when people are trying to co-opt things and call themselves something that they are not. So when someone says they're a national democratic socialist or something like that, you'll know, just because the word is a word I like, it doesn't mean that they're a friend. North Korea calls itself the People's Democratic Republic of Korea. Are they a democratic republic? Are they one that has representational democracy? I mean, it doesn't matter what something calls itself. You have to learn to recognize it. And so, no, the left doesn't have all the good media. The right does make movies, they do make other kinds of media, but it's important to learn to recognize what's what.